Imagine spending 65 hours every single month doing absolutely nothing but chasing down money you've already earned.
Which is, frankly, an agonizing amount of time.
It really is. I mean, that is nearly 8 full working days, practically 2 entire weeks out of your month spent just making phone calls, sending emails, and trying to get clients to pay you for the hard work you and your team have already completed.
Yeah, and for the average subcontractor operating right now, that isn't some rare worst-case scenario. That's just standard operating procedure.
Exactly. And when you combine that administrative burden with the fact that these same subcontractors are waiting an average of 56 days just to get a check cleared on an invoice, you start to see why so many growing companies hit a wall.
They absolutely do.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are examining the true architecture of profitable construction scaling. And specifically, we're looking at a really precarious phase of your business's life cycle. That is the $3 million to $10 million growth zone.
Right, because contractors in this bracket rarely fail because they lack skill or, do poor work.
No, not at all. They fail because their financial systems break under the weight of their own growth.
It's a critical dynamic to understand, and it's one of those systemic realities of the industry that most owners don't address until they are actively in a crisis.
Which is exactly what we want to help you avoid. And to figure out where these structural cracks are forming, we're relying on a really robust stack of sources for you today.
Yes, some fantastic data.
This entire deep dive is powered by market intelligence and analytic reports from Smart Business Automator. They've provided the critical data we need to truly understand this scaling trap.
Looking at exactly where the capital gets bottlenecked.
Right, and more importantly, the strategic levers you can pull to break free. Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start by looking at what is widely considered the primary threat to contractors in that $3 million to $7 million and up to $10 million range.
The scaling trap.
Exactly. Adding volume to your business without having the proper cash flow systems in place is just a highly efficient way to run out of money.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive when you're in the driver's seat. You think, if I am consistently winning bids, my utilization rate is high, my crews are out there working every day, then the business must be inherently healthy.
Right. But wait, if you're pulling in, say, $8 million a year, shouldn't the sheer volume of revenue cover those operational gaps?
You would definitely think so. But the data tells a completely different story. According to the latest market intelligence from Smart Business Automator, cash flow is the #1 structural pain point across all intelligence sources.
Because construction is so capital intensive up front.
Precisely. Let's say you land a new $2 million commercial project. In month 1, you might need to lay out $400,000 in labor, equipment rentals, and material costs.
Just to get started.
Right. And if your average collection time is 56 days, you are entirely financing that client's build out of your own working capital for 2 solid months.
Which is wild. You're basically acting as an uncompensated bank for the general contractor.
You really are. And if you scale up and take on 3 of those projects simultaneously, you haven't tripled your wealth.
You've tripled your immediate cash liability.
Exactly. And when you break down the math on those 65 hours a month spent chasing payments, the financial drain is substantial. That administrative burden translates to roughly $30,000 to $50,000 lost annually.
Wow.
And that's just the soft cost of the time wasted. It doesn't factor in the opportunity cost of having your capital tied up in a 56-day waiting game.
Which prevents you from mobilizing on the next profitable job. So a $50,000 leak in operational efficiency isn't just an annoyance, it's a massive leak in the boat.
It is.
But what I find interesting is how a lot of owners react to this pressure. When the bank account gets tight, the immediate instinct is usually, we need more revenue, we need to go sell another job.
What's fascinating here is how frequently contractors misdiagnose this issue. Because they feel a constant squeeze on their cash reserves, they assume they have a sales problem.
Right, they think one more massive contract will float the business.
Yes. So they bid aggressively, sometimes sacrificing their own margins just to win the job and secure a mobilization deposit. But they are trading a systems problem with a sales solution. Selling a new job when your payment cycle takes 56 days just exponentially increases your upfront labor and material costs. It pushes that required cash lifeline further over the horizon.
So the new job actually accelerates the cash crunch.
Precisely. The growth itself becomes a liability.
That makes perfect sense. But we know companies do successfully scale past $10 million. So let's pivot to the strategic fixes. How do you take control back from that 56-day cycle?
A big part of the solution starts with how you structure your billing. Specifically, shifting to milestone billing.
We have some really compelling numbers on this. We're looking at ServiceTitan data here. They tracked contractors who transitioned away from traditional back-weighted billing models and moved to milestone billing. The result was a $150,000 improvement in their cash position in just 60 days.
It's a phenomenal shift in leverage.
Purely from changing the trigger points for when an invoice is generated.
Exactly. You are no longer waiting until a massive multi-week phase of a project is entirely finished to ask for compensation. You structure the contract so cash drips into the business exactly when the expenses for those phases hit your ledger.
But practically speaking, how do you enforce that? If I'm a subcontractor and I go to a developer who is used to paying me 30% up front and 70% on completion.
And they hold all the cards.
Right. And I suddenly demand to be paid every 2 weeks based on micro milestones, they're going to push back. How do you negotiate that without losing the bid?
You have to position it as a risk mitigation strategy for both parties, rather than just a demand for faster cash. You tie the milestones to tangible, undeniable progress points, particularly material deliveries.
Okay, give me an example.
Instead of billing 50% at the completion of a rough-in, you structure the contract to bill 20% the day the materials are dropped on the site, 20% when the framing is inspected, and 10% upon phase sign-off. You explain to the client that funding the materials up front guarantees their project timeline won't be delayed by supply chain holds or vendor credit limits.
Which is a huge selling point right now. So that ServiceTitan data point really illustrates how a strategic administrative shift can instantly inject 6 figures of liquidity into an operation.
Without having to sell a single additional dollar of work.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Once you have the billing triggers optimized, you need a mechanism to track where all that cash is actually sitting at any given moment. We need to talk about WIP reporting.
Work in progress.
Yes. For a business navigating this specific growth zone, this is arguably the most critical operational metric. Let's get into the mechanics of it. How exactly does a WIP report function as an early warning system?
A work in progress report is the single most important financial tool for a growing contractor. If you are operating without a formalized WIP schedule, you are essentially making business decisions based on your current bank balance.
Which in construction is a total illusion.
Exactly. A WIP report looks at every active job, measures your actual costs to date against your estimated total costs, and compares that percentage to how much you have actually billed the client.
Let's walk through a tangible example of that, because the math is where the value really becomes clear.
Absolutely. Let's say you are executing a $500,000 commercial fit-out. You estimate the total cost to complete the job will be $400,000, leaving you $100,000 in profit.
Simple enough.
You are halfway through the project timeline, and you check your WIP report. It shows you have already spent $280,000 on labor and materials.
Meaning you've burned through 70% of your budget.
Even though you were only 50% done with the work. Without a WIP report, you might not realize you are hemorrhaging margin on that specific job until the final reconciliation months later.
And by then, the cash is already gone, and you've likely used deposits from other jobs to cover the loss.
Exactly. The WIP report catches that over-budget trend in real time, allowing you to investigate immediately. Are your crews doing unauthorized rework? Did material costs spike? You can intervene.
And it goes the other way too, right?
Yes. On the flip side, the WIP report is crucial for catching underbilling. If you are 60% complete with a job, but you've only invoiced for 40% of the contract value, you're underbilled. You are letting the client hold onto your cash.
The analytic reports from Smart Business Automator really highlight this.
I absolutely do.
Contractors who rigorously maintain WIP reporting successfully avoid the sudden cash crunches that bankrupt their competitors. They never wake up realizing they can't make payroll because the WIP report flagged an underbilled project 3 weeks prior.
It gives you visibility.
But wait, if we are fixing the billing triggers and monitoring the WIP, how do we anticipate the macro cash position of the entire company? Seeing that one job is underbilled is helpful, but it doesn't tell me if I have enough overall capital to cover my quarterly tax payments and buy 3 new trucks next month.
That requires layering proactive cash flow forecasting on top of your WIP. Forecasting maps out your anticipated receivables against your upcoming payables across all jobs and overhead.
Like looking into a crystal ball.
Precisely. It identifies shortfalls 60 to 90 days out. That 60 to 90-day window is the difference between making a strategic pivot and a panicked reaction.
Right.
If your forecast shows a cash dip coming in 75 days, you have leverage. You can push a vendor payment, you can actively accelerate a milestone on a current project, or you can temporarily draw on a line of credit when your financials actually look strong.
Which is the only time banks actually want to lend to you anyway.
Exactly.
And having that 90-day foresight is becoming a strict requirement right now because the fundamental nature of how jobs are being contracted is shifting. We are looking at a major industry transition in 2026. Time and materials, or T&M contracts, are surging.
The era of the massive locked-in fixed-price contract is becoming highly untenable.
By the way, for you listeners who want to dive deep into the specific mechanics of this contract shift, Engineering News Record is hosting a webinar on March 18th dedicated entirely to this topic. But let's look at the strategic side of this. Why is fixed price suddenly the enemy of a scaling contractor?
It comes down to risk allocation. In a fixed price contract, the contractor absorbs almost all the risk of market volatility. If the price of copper spikes 20% mid-project, or if a supply chain bottleneck delays a critical component and your labor costs inflate because your crews are waiting on site.
The client is entirely insulated.
Yes, you agreed to a fixed price, so those overages eat directly into your margin and your cash flow. Our research partners at Smart Business Automator flagged this trend early.
They saw the shift coming.
They did, linking the aggressive shift toward T&M directly to the necessity of protecting cash flow against unpredictable market variables. Time and materials contracts inherently protect the contractor. You are paid for your actual material costs and actual hours worked, plus your margin. Your cash flow remains insulated because real-time cost increases are passed transparently to the client.
That sounds great in theory, but let's look at the reality of the market. If I have a $4 million contractor trying to win a municipal bid or working with a massive institutional developer, they are going to demand a fixed price contract. They don't care about my preference for T&M. Their financing requires a guaranteed maximum price. What do I do then?
It is a very real constraint. If you operate in a sector where fixed price is mandatory, you cannot rely on standard historical estimating. You have to introduce heavy line item contingencies and negotiate incredibly strict change order management.
No more handshake agreements.
Absolutely not. If a client causes a 3-day delay, that cannot just be a verbal agreement to catch up later. It has to be documented and billed as a change order immediately. You have to build the financial buffer directly into the fixed price to simulate the protection of a T&M contract.
Which requires serious discipline. Now let's tie all of this back to the speed of the money. We talked about DSO, or day sales outstanding.
The average number of days it takes for you to collect payment after an invoice is sent?
Exactly. We know the industry average is 56 days. If you implement milestone billing, strict WIP reporting, and better contract terms, and you reduce your DSO by just 10 days, the math is staggering.
It really is.
Shaving 10 days off that waiting period frees up enough trapped working capital to fund an entirely new crew or purchase major equipment in cash. It is literally unlocking trapped growth.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, reducing DSO isn't just about covering day-to-day overhead. It is about unlocking the ultimate growth flywheel bonding capacity.
Huge point.
For contractors looking to move up market, to bid on municipal infrastructure, federal work, or large commercial developments, you need surety bonds. A surety bond guarantees to the project owner that you have the financial stability to finish the job. Now, how do surety companies determine your bonding capacity? They do not just look at your top-line revenue. They look intensely at your liquidity and your balance sheet.
Meaning they look at how much actual cash you have access to, not just what people owe you.
Exactly. If your DSO is 80 days, you might have millions of dollars in accounts receivable, but you have very little liquid cash. A surety company sees that as a high risk and will cap your bonding capacity.
But if you drop the DSO?
If you get your DSO down to 40 days, your liquid cash position strengthens significantly. Strong, predictable liquidity directly equals higher bonding capacity. Higher bonding capacity allows you to bid on bigger, more lucrative jobs that your cash-poor competitors are locked out of. It is a compounding flywheel.
But you cannot fake your way through a surety audit with a sloppy WIP report and a bloated DSO.
Yeah.
And regarding trapped cash, there is actually a significant legislative shift happening around one of the most frustrating aspects of construction finance: retainage.
The bane of the subcontractor's existence?
Truly. Retainage is when a client holds back a percentage of your payment, often 10%, until the entire project is completed to ensure quality. But for a subcontractor, that 10% often represents their entire profit margin for the job. You're effectively operating at cost for months, sometimes years, waiting for that final release.
And there is good news here.
Yes, retainage reform is gaining serious momentum. We are seeing legislation in several states capping retainage at 5%, and more importantly, legally requiring prompt release of those funds the moment a subcontractor's specific portion of the work is deemed complete. You don't have to wait for the roof to be finished if your contract was just to pour the foundation.
It is a vital regulatory shift. But until prompt release is federally standardized, contractors have to be highly strategic about client selection. You do not have to just accept terrible payment terms because it's an industry norm. This is where market intelligence becomes your competitive advantage.
How so?
Smart Business Automator's market intelligence actually identifies which specific market segments and client profiles have the fastest payment cycles. This allows contractors to strategically target clients based on payment speed, not just project size.
That is brilliant.
A $2 million job that reliably pays in 30 days provides infinitely more working capital to a scaling business than a $3 million job that strings you along for 90 days. Data gives you the power to select your clients.
So what does this all mean? It means that surviving the perilous $3 million to $10 million growth zone requires a fundamental shift in strategy. You have to abandon the growth at all cost mentality.
Adding more volume to a broken system only accelerates failure.
Exactly. True scaling requires meticulously tracking your work in progress so you never operate blind. It requires aggressively negotiating to reduce your day sales outstanding. It requires shifting contract types where possible and utilizing proactive cash flow forecasting to see the financial cliffs 90 days before you reach them. Financial systems are not just administrative tasks. They are the structural foundation of your company.
You have to build the architecture before you can sustain the empire.
Well said.
It is the only sustainable path forward. And as we look at the evolution of these systems, this raises an important question. We are currently focused on utilizing data and forecasting, but as these financial technologies become more deeply automated, what happens when the entire construction supply chain adopts them?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Could the agonizing reality of waiting 56 days for payment become entirely obsolete through the integration of smart contracts and blockchain technology? Imagine a scenario where the moment an inspector signs off on a project milestone using a tablet, the funds are instantly, automatically unlocked from escrow and deposited into the subcontractor's account. It would strip all the administrative friction out of the industry, fundamentally rewriting how we fund and build our infrastructure.
That is an incredible vision of where the industry is heading, and a perfect concept to leave you with today. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take these strategies, look critically at your own financial architecture, and keep questioning the systems driving your business. Until next time.